Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Nick Morrow DFS here, as always with Occupy Fantasy. This time to help you break down the UFC 318 card. I'm going to go fight by fight, giving you my predictions, kind of the lay of the land on this entire card as far as betting angles and DraftKings and FanDuel go. So definitely any questions you guys have, whether they be DFS related, betting related, anything, feel free to get them into the comments. I'll definitely be able to touch on everyone before the end of the stream. As always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, helps us get more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. And again, one of the cheapest entry points of the industry for premium content. You see these links, this little bulleted list right above me here. Links are in the description below. But as a member, you get the detailed slate breakdown from Derek. Also access to our Occupy model, ownership projections, etc. for DFS. We also have the mass lineup builder, excuse me, as well. So yeah, don't adjust your screens. I am very sunburnt. I am actually still on vacation, but had a fun week kind of researching this card. Definitely a fun one. Always love when we get a pay-per-view compared to some of these crazy Apex shows. But yeah, kind of different than last week in a lot of ways. First and foremost, want to kind of talk about the lay of the slate on both sites. The big kind of talking point last week was that we had so many guys above 9K, but also that we had a lot of interesting live underdogs. This card, similar in that we have a lot of guys and gals above 9K, but very different in that I don't know that there's a ton of underdogs I'm super excited to get to. What does that mean? It means stacking may be a little bit more viable here. We're going to talk about that in a moment with the main event. And also, yeah, leaving salary on the table in large field contests could be a way to go. But again, structure of the show. I am going to go through fight by fight, kind of give a very quick breakdown. We'll also let you guys kind of know where I'm at in terms of a pick, any betting angles, things like that. So once again, appreciate you being here. Let's get right into it now. And yeah, please comment if there's any technical difficulties. I'm using earpods. I have pretty solid internet here where I'm at on Cape Cod, but I just want to make sure that yeah, everything goes smoothly. So once again, thank you guys for being here. First fight on the card. Card is built around Dustin Poirier. This will be his final fight in the UFC, his retirement fight. It's kind of been planned for a while. He's still super competitive, one of the best in the world at 155 pounds, taking on a fighter in Max Holloway, who he's actually faced twice before. I mean, throw the first one out completely, in my opinion. Holloway was a kid. This fight took place 13 years ago. Poirier won that one via submission. But if we go back 5 or 6 years, the second fight, I think there's a little bit we could glean for that, excuse me, from that. But we do need to keep in mind both these guys have kind of come a long way since then. Holloway, more of a true 155 pounder now. Poirier himself has been saying it all week in interviews that this is definitely a bigger and stronger Max Holloway than he fought back in 2019, where he did secure that fight via decision. Notably in that fight, though, both fighters scored pretty well. So Poirier in the win, 178, I believe, significant strikes, 113 DK points. So yeah, there's definitely merit to stacking this fight here. Taking a look at Max Holloway and what he had done in that fight as well. Um, Again, guys, working on one monitor today, used to having two, so definitely bear with me in terms of any technical difficulties, things like that. Shouldn't be a big issue though, but yeah, going back to that Poirier fight, Max, even in a fight where he was outstruck, definitely wore the damage in that one, scored 78 fantasy points. So, on a card where we're lacking quality underdogs, it does make sense to probably stack this fight, at least in low risk contests, talking about your cash games, everything like that. Personally, I mean, in looking at this fight, right now we're seeing Max as kind of the slight favorite. I do think that's probably where the line should be. What we know about Max more than anything is he is a very high volume striker. He's going to put the volume out there. No real concerns as far as that goes. And yeah, just pulling up some statistics here. Max lands more than 7 significant strikes per minute, absorbs less than 5. Poirier lands just over 5, absorbs 4.3. Obviously, Dustin, the more powerful striker, more true boxer, throws those winging hooks, definitely more KOs on his record. Holloway, when he knocks someone out, it's usually attritional. We saw that in the Gaethje fight, a fight that many are kind of comparing to this one. But I will say Poirier definitely the better technical boxer compared to Justin Gaethje. Maybe doesn't have quite the same level of leg kick, but fighting out of that southpaw stance, we've seen Max have trouble with him before. But yeah, I do think Max is the side here. If I were picking a side on the money line, making a prediction, I do think it's going to be Holloway. Two extremely durable fighters as well. I do expect this to go all 5 rounds. But again, last few seconds of this one, wouldn't be surprised to see Max point at the floor. This is Dustin Poirier's last fight in the UFC. Again, could see him going out on a shield. A few intangibles just to keep in mind. Holloway coming off the KO against Ilia Topuria. Obviously, first fight back from the KO. Always a little bit of concern with durability as these fighters get up there in age, but Topuria is kind of an outlier, in my opinion. I wouldn't put too much in that. Then, obviously, with this Poirier retirement fight festivities going on all week, this will be in front of his home crowd in Lafayette, Louisiana. Max himself has told the crowd this week, boo me more. This is Dustin's fight. Definitely support him. He knows his role here, but he's still going to want to get the win as he tries to work his way back to that Ilia Topuria rematch, maybe at 155 pounds. If not, there's a lot of other big fights for him again. Poirier retiring, Max, win or lose here, is definitely going to continue to be involved in the top half of this division. So, again, in summary, I think we can definitely look to both of these fighters in DFS. I think with whichever side you're on, probably a fight you want exposure to. I think you could stack it, especially in lineups where you're not really favoring underdogs. And if we go ahead and pull up some of the graphics here from the occupied model, we see Max reigning as the top OF index play on the slate, extremely affordable on both sides. Going through here and looking at ownership, the two highest owned plays on the entire slate. So Max is in more than 50% of the lineups, which kind of tells you that with Poirier being 44%, there's a good chance we're going to see some stacks. But yeah, definitely a fight you want exposure to. Again, I do think Max gets it done, likely by decision, but in front of his home crowd. Um, I don't know. Not a fight you probably want to get too involved with. I do have a best bet at the end of the show here, which I'll definitely pull up in a bit. We did go 3-1 on best bets last time, so definitely stay tuned for that. Also, at the end of the show, I'll kind of do a build on each side as long as we have time. DraftKings and FanDuel. Maybe we take a look at what this fight looks like stacked, or if we go away from it and don't stack. I think that's a good way to get different. Um, all right. So moving into the co-main event here, and yeah, this is a pay-per-view card. It's pretty quality, but it does drop off in a big way in terms of quality. Just fight to fight on this card in terms of level. Roman Kopylov taking on Paulo Costa here in the co-main event. Kind of a weird co-main event. Costa, he's been losing a lot lately, very inactive. I mean, we're just looking at the record here. Lost to Strickland, Whitaker, Vettori, who's also on this card, Adesanya, and Rockhold, the only win in Rockhold's own retirement fight from the UFC. And then Kopolov's been pretty inconsistent. Does tend to do well whenever he's taking on someone who isn't primarily a grappler. I do think Paulo could grapple here, but at the same time, not really a guy known for his fight IQ. Not really a guy known to pursue grappling all that aggressively either. So not really a spot that I'm feeling too confident in Paulo really leaning on that part of his game. But pulling up the statistics here, Kopylov is the favorite looking at the money line right now, minus 230, minus 240 all the way up to minus 250 on some books, depending where you're placing your action. But statistically, Paulo, he does land 6.2 significant strikes per minute, which is great, but he's absorbing 6.5, so he's taking a ton of damage in those exchanges. Kopolov's slightly positive striking differential, 4.96 landed per minute compared to 4.86 absorbed, but definitely the better technical striker, especially early in fights at range. This was a 5-rounder. Maybe I could see myself swinging over to the Paulo side, but right now, where things stand, I do think Kopylov probably where we want to be. And as I sit here and say, Paulo's clearest path would probably be to grapple a bit. Averages just 0.3 takedowns per 15 minutes. Kopylov has actually been wrestling more, averaging over 1 takedown per 15 minutes. So the question becomes, how much do we want to be involved in this fight, whether we're talking about DFS, betting, etc. I mean, I don't know. It's tricky for me. I do think Kopolov's the side, but if this fight took place a few years ago, this line would look absolutely ridiculous. I think it would be flipped. Again, we're seeing Kopylov around minus 240 here. Say this fight took place right after the Adesanya fight, even in an ugly loss. I think that we'd probably see Costa as the favorite. But again, why speak in hypotheticals? This fight's taking place on Saturday, the 19th, 2025, month of July there. But yeah, Kopylov, 8,900 on DK, definitely a little bit pricey. Probably needs to finish. And I will say this more than anything about Paulo. He is extremely durable. On a card we're starving for underdogs, I do think there's some merit to maybe mixing in Costa a little bit here. Just not something I'm super interested in doing because even when Costa does well, even when he's winning fights, he's not scoring well unless he's finding that knockout. And Kopylov does seem pretty durable. I think the only way maybe Paulo finds a finish would be late in the third round if Kopylov starts the gas, maybe chasing a finish of his own. But again, that's such an unlikely outcome when we talk about everything that's possible here. I'm fine mixing in Kopylov. I think where he's owned is pretty much where it should be. Again, just going to use it as an opportunity to plug the model and the ownership projections. But for me, I will get to some Kopylov. Don't mind mixing him into parlays. But just keep in mind, I mean, a few years ago, this fight would be lined completely differently. Costa's super inactive. It seems like he's a little bit in his own head right now. Um, but yeah, I just don't have a ton of confidence in siding with him, even if he is slightly better technically and uh, and overall better, well-rounded. Excuse me. I'm going to take a quick look at chat here and see what you guys are up to. Definitely appreciate everyone tuning in on a Friday night. Um, and yeah, good question slash comment here from Mad Mardigan. My apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but why would the UFC make this fight unless they think Costa wins? Um, I mean, the thing with Costa is he's not really doing a ton for them in terms of marketing. The guy fights like once every year or two. Kopylov, I mean, we talk about the Russians. It's a different market almost for him. Like we're talking about guys at a Khabib's camp, all talented wrestlers. We saw Curtis get a fight that was winnable last week. Kopylov coming off a win over him. I actually think that he can make some noise. I mean, they're putting him in a co-main event spot, and if he wins here, I mean, they could continue to put him on pay-per-view cards. And again, I do think Costa's the funner fighter. I think he's more marketable. But when a guy's fighting less than once per year, it's really tough to glean much from that. If you're the UFC, definitely seems to be past his prime now. More of a name to build guys on than anything. And Kopylov, while he is weathered, he has been in the promotion for a while. Um, yeah, I think he's still somewhat young. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, these guys are actually both born in 91, so 34 years old, both a little bit past their prime. But again, it just kind of tells you, I don't think the UFC is doing a ton to market Costa. I think Kopilov's kind of in the same frame when they're talking about the future of this division. Definitely a good comment, though. And those are the types of things we do need to kind of factor into our handicapping. Obviously, the X's and O's matter what you see on film, but intangibles as well. Like, what is the UFC trying to market here? And we got another fight where that is somewhat relevant. We got Kevin Holland taking on Daniel Rodriguez in the featured bout. This was a fight that was supposed to take place. If you guys remember, Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to fight Nate Diaz, missed weight by like 8 to 10 pounds, and then they had to shuffle the entire card. Rodriguez ended up fighting Lee. Holland ended up in the main event against Chimaev, got kind of tossed all over the place. Co-main event, rather. Nate ended up fighting Tony. That's a conversation for another day. But yeah, Kevin Holland is two fighters, in my opinion. This is a bit of a cliche, but at 185 pounds, barely a ranked guy, right? But when he cuts down to 170, he looks excellent, coming off two really solid wins over guys who you could consider to be primarily grapplers. I know Luke Cage strikes just as much, but nice wins over Luke and Nelson. Struggled against DeRitter and Delidze up at 185. That's really no surprise to me, though. So yeah, again, two different fighters. When he's at 170 pounds, this is a guy who should be ranked. He seems to be locked in. He has momentum on his side again. Very much a fighter who kind of, I don't know, thrives and falls with that momentum. We see him go on streaks, whether they're wins or losses, and I think we're going to see another win from him here against a pretty tough fighter in Daniel Rodriguez, but a fighter who's not nearly as well-rounded, in my opinion. Coming off a solid win over Santiago Ponzinibbio, a fighter who's getting way up there in his career. Alex Morono as well, just two guys who seem to have a foot halfway out the door. Losses to Gary Gastelum. You could forgive him for the Gary loss given how highly touted Gary is, but the sub to Magny to me is the biggest red flag. One of my favorite plays on the card is Holland inside the distance. I'll bring that up in a little bit, but looking across most books, I think he's minus 150 to minus 160 to win inside. You can even take him by sub here as well, because if Neil Magny's going to sub you, I think Kevin Holland could sub you pretty easily in that same breath. And Kevin Holland, again, just carrying a ton of momentum in this fight. Rodriguez looks good, but he's getting by just the older guys in the division. Holland is not that. Rodriguez has had speed advantages over Ponzo and Morono. Arguably, he lost to him too in a fight he lost. He's not going to have a speed advantage here at all. Holland does a really good job fighting at the end of his strikes as well. Rodriguez really needs to establish that jab to find success. I think he's going to have some trouble here. I will say he's priced favorably on a on a card where we're really lacking quality underdogs. Makes some sense, but to me, Holland, one of my favorite plays on the entire board. Really like the price, and we'll get into the best bets at the end of the show. He's featured in a few plays for me there, and there's actually an angle I like as well that covers you in case maybe Rodriguez were to pull off the upset. But one of my more confident sides in terms of money line, just in terms of value, is Kevin Holland on the slate. I think he looks excellent. Can he pay off that price tag? Yes, but probably needs the early submission. We look at this round two against Luque, only scored 92 fantasy points at 9,300 on DK. That's probably not enough for you to consider him someone who's hitting that salary point. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to bring up the graphics again real quick here just to see if they're in any of the ownerships. I'm not seeing them. But yeah, a little bit of a teaser. We'll get into some of the best bets at the end of the show here. Getting into another fight again, guys. Keep the comments coming. Definitely appreciate you. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, get access to Occupy behind the paywall. Just $7 to get into the Discord. Get access to the model that I'll be talking through when it comes to ownership projections, everything else that you need to build DFS lineups. Another really interesting fight here between Dan Ige and Patricio, excuse me, Pitbull. Patricio is his brother. But yeah, really interesting fight. Some people said this was the fight that should have been made for Pitbull when he came into the UFC instead of taking on Yair Rodriguez. I mean, Ige is kind of a mirror match for him in a lot of ways. I think the difference, though, is that these guys are kind of in different parts of their respective careers. Is Ige young? No. But he is a guy who came up through the Contender Series. He's been taking on the class of the division, still seems to be in his prime, coming off a somewhat controversial KO win over Sean Woodson, a fight he looked pretty good in. Competitive against Diego Lopez on extremely short notice, hours notice. Obviously, a lot of us remembering that fight from a few cards back. And he was competitive against Lerone Murphy, one of the better fighters in the world at 145 pounds. So he's still taking on the best of the best. When it comes to Pitbull, I mean, he looked terrible, honestly, against Yair. Just didn't really throw much. Only averaged 2.45 significant strikes landed per minute. I do want to give Pitbull his flowers in his prime. He probably was a guy who could compete in the top 15 at 145 pounds. Much more aggressive than explosive, quick in exchanges. But as he ages, and we see this often in the lighter weight classes, it's going to be tougher for him to hang against the elite level of competition. So for me here, I do think Ige is the side. And looking at the price right now on the money line, I do think it's a bit inflated, if I'm being completely honest. I hate to play both sides of these things, but minus 220 for Ige does feel a little bit crazy, knowing what Pitbull can look like if he is at his best here. Do I expect to see the best version of him, though? Probably not. I think Ige's the better striker. He's going to be putting out more volume. He's going to push the pressure, force Patricio to fight off his back foot. Patricio is a good counter striker, but Ige is extremely durable. So even if he takes a few big shots, I do think the volume and the minutes are going to outweigh the moments here. And Ige averages just under one takedown per 15 minutes. Even if he's not getting them, I think he could mix them in here to kind of keep Pitbull guessing. I mean, I'm really touting Ige here, right? But I do want to make note on a card where there's not a ton of great underdogs. I'm going to say this a few times. I do think Pitbull's someone you could consider. You just have to wonder how he's going to score, even if he were to be in the winning lineup, right? So pulling him up here, 15 fantasy points across 3 rounds, even if he was awarded the decision or something, doubled his strikes. Like, he's still barely hitting value there. So unless no other underdogs on this card come through, and unless Max and Poirier don't go 5 rounds, and they both don't outscore like 50, 60 fantasy points. It's going to take a lot for Patricio to even be in the winning lineup if he is one of the only dogs to come through. So I don't like him much here. I don't mind Ige, but again, not a guy who always scores well unless he's finding the finish. Could he? Maybe, but the round 3 KO against Woodson, just 65 fantasy points, really not great to see. Did KO Philly, scored really well, so I do think he needs to finish here. And while Pitbull is slowing down, I do think he's pretty durable. So just not a fight I'm super invested in terms of DFS. I do like the Ige money line, but again, it's getting a little bit too inflated now as it's over minus 200. Maybe look to play him by decision or round 3 or by decision or finish only. Again, I think Ige has the durability advantage here. That could be enough maybe for him to get it done. But yeah, neither fighter showing up as a top play or as a top owned play. So a fight that we don't need to be over invested in. But again, I do think if I'm making a prediction, it's EK by decision. Um, but again, we're starving for dogs. We do know Pitbull has a quality version in him. It just doesn't exist anymore at this age. I'm not sure. All right. Moving right along here, I believe Zellhuber and Johnson's next. Just want to confirm that. Um, but again, a really fun card in terms of name value. I mean, there's some. Michael Johnson, one of the more grizzled vets in the division at 155 pounds. Daniel Zellhuber, extremely young fighter, born in 1999, on the come up. Prospect who does continue to kind of build momentum in spite of a loss to Esteban Ribovic his last time out when he fought in the sphere, excuse me. But prior to that, wins over Venata, Giagos, Prado. He's looked really solid. And Michael Johnson, a bit of a resurgence lately. Went over Darius Flowers, Otman Izatar, two guys who I don't believe are in the UFC anymore. He has suffered KO losses over the past few years. I do think that's likely what he's going to be running into here against Zellhuber. The speed is just the key here, right? Zellhuber, one of the quicker strikers there is in the division, continues to make massive improvements everywhere. And even in a loss against Ribovic, 121 significant strikes, landed a knockdown as well, scored 59 in that loss. If he got the win, he maybe would have been optimal. I'd have to go back and look at that card. But yeah, I mean, we kind of need the finish here for him to hit value. I do think it's very likely to come, though. So Zellhuber, another fighter I have a lot of interest in. Taking a quick look at the model. Again, not as popular as maybe he should be. You can only fit a couple of these expensive fighters again because there's not a ton of great underdogs like we had last week. I mean, some of them came through, some of them didn't. I'll recap that in a bit. We did hit on Derek Lewis. Obviously, Nate Landwehr looked great for half a second until he didn't. But yeah, you need some of these dogs to come through if you're going to be playing multiple fighters on DK over 9K, over 20 on FanDuel, etc. But as far as like parlay pieces go, I do think Zellhuber gets it done. I do think the money line's a bit insane here. Um, Again, a lot of these money lines recently between young and old fighters have been getting completely out of hand. But yeah, minus 600 is just kind of ridiculous. I do think he gets it done. Johnson, again, a guy who kind of built a career on speed, getting up there in age, doesn't really have that anymore. Somewhat durable, but not to the point that I don't think Zellhuber can finish him, especially on volume over the course of 3 rounds. Again, he's pushing 100 significant strikes every single time we see him out there. So again, Zellhuber's aside for me. I actually think inside the distance is probably the better way to go in terms of searching for value at your sports books. Don't mind him in DFS, but again, I think there are other expensive plays we can prioritize over him. But again, pretty confident Zellhuber gets it done. I imagine a lot of you are with me on that one. Matt Marchin getting back on that Kopylov fight for a minute. Maybe they think they've done all they can with Costa. Thanks. Yeah, and you'll see that. I mean, they really want to build guys as long as they can. They want to make stars in this sport. But as soon as they start to fade a little bit, the best thing they can do is try to build other fighters and create stars off of them. And yeah, if Kopolov's not a star, fine. But if they can keep him as a name that sells seats on pay-per-views, that's a great thing for them. Any fighters near the bottom that could score well in a loss? Vettori. Definitely going to answer this one over the course of the next few fights, man. But yeah, Vettori could be one. It's just which version of him shows up here, right? And is that the next fight? I think we have one more before we get to that one. I would have loved to use it as kind of a segue there. But first, let's talk through Phillips and Oliveira. Fight at bantamweight, where I do think maybe there is some value on someone like Kyler Phillips. I know the model likes him a lot. He's one of the only underdogs that the model actually thinks has a chance to win here. I think 7,700 isn't exactly cheap, but again, we are starving for dogs on this card. He struggled against Rob Font, came out great in that first round, looked excellent, but to the point that he kind of gassed himself out and he faded, lost that fight convincingly over the next two. But you have to think a young fighter training at an MMA lab probably corrects that issue in his game. At the same time, he's running into an absolute monster here in Vinicius Oliveira. I know I'm not alone in thinking this guy was a little bit overrated coming into the promotion, but he's shut me up in a big way. I mean, the Supaj KO was one of the best KOs of the year in 2024. Fight he was losing early, kind of looked like he had holes in his defensive grappling game. But over the last few fights, I mean, he's certainly shored those up. A win over Ricky Simone, one of the better grapplers in the division. And to win convincingly over such a tough out in Saeed Nurmagomedov, a guy who fights on really narrow margins, I mean, this guy has finally sold me to the point that I do think he should be the favorite here. At the same time, it does feel a little bit like recency bias, with Phillips being a considerable underdog. But let me take a look at the money line. I think this line has closed a bit over the course of the week. 1 point look dog was a bigger favorite, but yeah, just minus 140 now, most books, plus 120 for Kyler. So if we're just talking the betting market outside of the main event, I actually think this is one of the closer fights on the card. Again, Phillips, probably the better wrestler here. I mean, almost certainly the better wrestler here. Oliveira's defensive grappling has come a long way, but what happens in the scrambles is going to be very interesting. And can Phillips's cardio hold for 15 minutes if they are scrambling a lot? On the feet, I think Oliveira is going to land the more powerful shots, the cleaner shots. He's the better defensive striker as well. Both these guys have really solid footwork, but when we talk about the grappling, yeah, both around a 75% takedown defense, both averaging about two or so takedowns per 15 minutes. To be exact, Phillips averages 2.6, Oliveira just under 2. But again, I think in most fights, Oliveira wants to kind of sprawl and brawl, stay on the feet. So it's interesting. Again, I do think there's some recency bias here, but looking at the price, I actually thought this line would be wider. I think if there is a finish here, it could come either way. But yeah, I just think the momentum is on the Oliveira side, but at the same time, Phillips is one of the underdogs you certainly, excuse me, should be taking into consideration. But to get back to that last question, I mean, talking about what's really cheap on this card, I don't know that Phillips necessarily fits into that mold. Um, yeah, because we've had some of these cards recently, right? Where even the loser of some of the fights, if they're putting out enough volume, could end up in an optimal lineup. I do think Daniel Rodriguez, if he doesn't get submitted quickly, could score pretty well sub 7K. I don't think he wins. Valentin in a fight that's probably going to take place on the feet, he's someone who's cheap enough in a volatile enough matchup against a super prospect in Gautier, but a guy who still has a lot to prove, maybe he scores well. Michael Johnson, if his chin holds up against Zellhuber, he's going to look great at that price, especially over on FanDuel, where you're getting more points for significant strikes. So he's someone I'd be looking at there. Then Adam Fugitt would probably need to get his grappling going. I don't trust him much here. McVey, we'll talk about that fight in a bit. This kid does seem to have some pep into his step, but not someone I'm super confident in. So if I am going below 7K, I actually think maybe Johnson might be the guy. Like Zellhuber probably finishes him, but if he can extend it into the third round, continue to land volume, he might look okay. We also have the girl fight in the opener, Caliari against Carly Judice, but I know we're all heavy on Judice here on Occupy. Caliari going to need some grappling to look good there. So again, jumping around a bit, guys. Definitely want to stay on track in terms of fight by fight. Just to kind of recap the last one, the model loves Kyler Phillips, identifies him as one of the better dogs in the entire card. I am leaning to the Oliveira side. I actually think you could maybe find a finish here late if the pace is crazy early. I want to see Phillips shore up that hole in his cardio. Hasn't always been an issue for him, but it does seem to kind of rear its head from time to time. And again, this is an MMA lab fighter. I don't want to talk down on any gym, but they've had a lot of guys fail for PEDs, a lot of them related to their cardio, etc., EPO, things like that. So maybe it depends what he's on here, which version of Kyler Phillips we get. But if he's on all the good stuff, I certainly think he's one of the more interesting underdogs. I'm going to side with Oliveira here, probably by decision. But there is some value on him finding the finish, especially late. But getting into another really interesting fight here, I'll take a quick look at chat. But we do have Brandon Allen taking on Marvin Vettori. And yeah, Mad Martian here thinking Van and Roval were optimal. Certainly. Yeah, we had that lineup. Brian came in second place on FanDuel in their big contest for 8K. He had Van at captain. Very, very sharp play. But the guy ahead of him actually did stack that fight that did end up optimal. But yeah, your question before that, could Vettori score well in a loss? I mean, easiest way to do this is to just kind of look at what he's done in his recent losses. And he's had some. So we do probably have a decent sample size here. Obviously, just looking at game logs in any DFS sport isn't always the way to go. But yeah, against the Elite, landed 111 significant strikes. Cannonier, that was a 5-rounder, keep in mind, 67 fantasy points. Lost to Whitaker, though, 15, where he just couldn't close the distance. Did not score well there. But in this particular matchup, it's interesting. If these two guys are just going to stand and swing, I think he could score exceptionally well. The question becomes if Allen's getting his grappling going and Vettori's spending a lot of time up against the cage or working back to his feet, I think he's going to have some issues here. The biggest question marks around this fight to me are which version of each of these guys is going to show up. Marvin Vettori's brother recently passed away. He's been dealing with a lot of stuff outside of the cage mentally, jumping around gyms, things like that. Just not good stuff when you're talking about fighting the best guys in the world. Then Brendan Allen, honestly, when he's at his best, he looks tremendous. Like he could beat anyone in the world. And then we'll get versions of him where he just looks terrible. I mean, he got that win over Curtis, but fight I didn't really think he gave that impressive of a performance against a much smaller guy. Ivavov outclassed after a hot start early, and then Hernandez again, he looked good early, and then he started to fade. So there is a dynamic here where Vettori becomes live as this fight gets into the third round. If it was a 5 rounder, I'd probably have more interest. But I do think early Allen is going to kind of be the front runner. We did get a question last week about the Landwehr fight. Um, I said that I thought Ferreira would win the first round at a high clip. What I meant was if it went to the scorecards, or even if it didn't, the judges were going to be giving him the first round just because of his style. We saw that kind of play out. And then I said Landwehr could take over. It's like he got a little bit too cocky going into that third round, though, ended up getting clipped. But in some ways, I see a similar fight here. Not nearly the same volume or pace, but I do think Allen wins the first round at a pretty high clip, right? I think Vettori probably wins the third at a decent clip. It's just going to be a question of what happens in the second round. I do think Allen probably, just given his activity, given the level of opponent he's facing, training for 5 round fights, we've just seen more out of him recently, which is enough for me to end up on the Brandon Allen side. At the same time, Vettori, talented enough. We've seen him challenge for the title. If he's at his best here, I mean, back against the wall too, coming off back-to-back losses, I mean, he's another guy we could consider a live underdog. Personally, I'm on the Allen side. Am I confident? No. I do think this fight goes to the decision, though. So if we get bad judges, maybe it could go to Vettori. But I do want to mention that Allen is another fighter from Louisiana, definitely going to have the home crowd behind him here. So maybe that takes a little bit of that, I don't know, nuance or not nuance. What am I saying? Um, I don't know. It shrinks the range of outcomes, right? It's tough to get robbed in front of a crowd that's behind you. It's easier to see those robberies when the crowd is backing the fighter who maybe should have lost. So I do think Allen probably the better technical striker here, but not by a wide margin. Vettori maybe a slightly better wrestler. Allen much, much better when it comes to jiu-jitsu. He's just checking a few more boxes for me, more than anything, the activity. And I just don't know where Vettori's head's at right now. He's a talented guy, but no real singular standout skill. He does put out a lot of volume, but he eats a lot of huge shots in exchanges. So, again, I think if Vettori wins, it's probably late, takes over in the second, or maybe finds a finish in the third. I think more likely than anything, though, we're going to see Brendan Allen get this fight done and win via decision. And how's he going to score here at 8,800? If it goes to decision, I mean, 119 against Curtis was awesome, right? But he had 6 takedowns. That was a 5 round fight. So I don't think we could really look at that one too deeply. Um, I don't know. We're all the way back to Malkoon, a fight I actually thought he lost where he didn't score well. He can score well enough here, and he's not going to be that popular. But I will say, Vettori, his durability is excellent. If you're hunting for dogs, just knowing a guy could go 3 rounds, sometimes that's enough, right? So I don't mind taking shots on him. I just don't think this is the best version of him. But again, Allen's so inconsistent. You just have to think he probably shows out here against his home crowd, or at least you'd kind of want to hope and think that. I guess we'll see. But moving into the next fight on the card here, pretty interesting one, right? Between Francisco Prado and Nikolai Veretennikov. Prado, a lot of hype for a little while. He's looked good, even in his losses. Daniel Zellhuber outclassed him significantly. Jake Matthews last time able to take him down a few times, really exposed the defensive grappling holes in his game. But Matthews coming off that huge win over Chidi, he's shown that he can kind of do that on the mat against a lot of guys. Nikolai Veretennikov, similar situation, taken down a bunch of times against a guy not many people are high on, Mr. Paige Van Zandt, Austin Vanderford. Did fight competitively against Danny Barlow, but again, just a guy who prefers to stand and swing. So what do we have here is probably a striker's delight, probably a fight that sneakily has fight of the night potential if, I mean, Holloway and Poirier didn't exist. But yeah, I mean, 4.38 significant strikes landed per minute for Prado. He is absorbing over 5, though. Veretennikov, much, much lower volume, 2.73, absorbing around 3.5, albeit a smaller sample size. He's only been in the UFC for a couple fights. This one's tricky. I think when we talk about level of competition, though, I've been more impressed with Prado recently. The reach advantage is on the Veretennikov side, 74-inch reach compared to 69-inch. But the way Veretennikov fights, he's not always using that super well. And Prado kind of crashes the pocket. He could get caught on a counter or something like that, but I actually think he's going to be landing the bigger shots, throwing much more volume. So outside of Veretennikov kind of catching him on a perfect counter, I do think if this goes decision, Prado's the side, and I actually like his money line here as well. Looking at him, minus 150, minus 140, all the way down to minus 135 at some books right now. So this is another line that's closed. I will say Veretennikov, one of the more interesting underdogs in terms of how he scores here. Kind of tough to gauge though, right? Because he's been taking on these grapplers. The fight against Barlow did not score well. He kept it competitive, but only landed 50 significant strikes. Again, just not a high volume striker compared to what he's going to be dealing with here in Prado. So, am I a little bit concerned about Prado's chin? Yes. And if Valentin finds it, he's probably going to be in the optimal lineup. At the same time, yeah, I'm just not necessarily sure I want to kind of make that stand. I do think that Prado has been running into really tough grapplers. He's been taking on a higher level of opponent. He's shown solid durability. And yeah, I mean the Zellhuber fight, he was absolutely obliterated. Matthews too, that able to kind of extend that fight to decision. Just he's looked beat up and bruised and bad at times, but he's going to continue to push forward. He's going to outvolume Veretennikov here, I think, no matter what. So as long as he can close the distance, keep that chin tucked, I do like him a lot here, especially at the 8,300 price tag on DK. I think he's fine on the money line. Have to take a quick look at FanDuel as well. But yeah, Veretennikov live underdog, and this is kind of a theme. I hate to keep saying this, but Veretennikov a live underdog, but I do prefer the favorite. But definitely a fight you could get both sides of and feel pretty good. Not confident whether it goes the distance or not. I'm thinking more likely than not it will. Again, I've seen solid durability out of both of these guys against a really quality level of opponent. Let's take a quick look at chat here, catch up on everything. Um, nice. Joanne here with a question on McVey. I'll definitely get to that in just a minute. Mr. Grapefruit, love this comment. Yeah, similar to Roy Valvan, what we saw a few weeks ago, there's definitely a world where Dustin and Max are both in the optimal. Who's going to be surprised if they both land 200 plus 300 or even 300 significant strikes? 100% luck, dog. I'm with you, man. Not crazy about the 100% just because Kyler could maybe get his grappling going and slow it down, but Luck Dog's just a beast, man. I don't know how he makes weight at 135 pounds. Love the comments, guys. Once again, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you tuning in here. Working off one monitor today, which is never easy to do, but definitely want to plug occupyfantasy.com. Slate breakdown from Derek. I think Brian contributes at times as well, but they do a great job, especially Derek, really digging into every single fight. And coming up here in the Jimmy Crute fight, I actually have a piece of that daily plug that I'll be able to show you guys so you can kind of see what you get. But yeah, the lineup builder, if you're mass multi entering, really, really helpful. Obviously, Brian coming off a huge win 2 weeks ago, 8K. I know he's kind of upset about it because the guy above him did have Van and Royval, but the tools work, the models work. Everything's been working. And Joanne, again, I'll pull up this comment in a minute when we get to that McVey fight. But yeah, definitely look good on the scale. The thing is, he is cutting weight twice in just a couple weeks, which to me is always a red flag. But we'll discuss that in just a minute. Really interesting fight here between a Tiba Gautier and Robert Valentin. So Valentin was on the Ultimate Fighter a couple seasons ago, maybe just one season ago. Another guy who's pretty good striker, but he's been running into grapplers. They said, hey, this time we're going to give you a guy who probably is going to strike with you. Issue is it's kind of a beast. And a lot of people are comparing this Gautier kid to Ngannou. I mean, just a freak athlete. Still very young and raw in his abilities, but his aggression and his just, I don't know, explosiveness has really shown that he can take a lot of guys out on the back half of this division. Last time out against Medina, I mean, Medina, not a good fighter, but he was signed to the UFC because he was supposed to have some ridiculous durability. Gautier mixed in the body work, knocked him down, did a great job really finishing him quickly there. I think we could see more of that here, right? So if we're looking at salary, 9,400 to me, I mean, as much as I like Holland to find the submission, I don't know if it comes in the first round. Same with Zellhuber in the KO. I think Gautier, maybe a lower floor than those two, but if you're paying 9K plus, you're probably not so concerned about floor, right? So I do think Gautier is the side here. Valentin is a good striker, definitely underrated, but aggressive to the point that I think it leads him into trouble in this one. I'm going to quickly pull him up while I jump over to my other screen. talk through some of the statistics. Um, but yeah, Valentin looked good on the Ultimate Fighter. Again, struggling against grapplers. Got knocked out by Ryan Loder, a guy who is known as a wrestler. I'd have to look into that again and see if it was ground and pound. Not a fight I rewatched this week. Again, just kind of trying to prioritize things, especially this week on vacation. But Thibaut Gautier, a guy I've been pretty impressed with. Looking at the statistics, over 6 significant strikes landed per minute. 2.2 absorbed. And again, this is a very small sample of data, just talking about the Medina fight in his Contender Series win. But Valentin, 1.1 per minute. A big reason for that is that he got pushed up against the cage by Torres Finney for one of the worst fights of the year against Torres Finney, a fight he lost, but via split decision. 55% takedown defense. I think this fight takes place on the feet. I just think Valentin, as good as he can look at times, won't look that good here against such an explosive athlete in Atiba, a guy who can fight in both stances. And Valentin usually has a reach advantage. Gautier, 81-inch reach advantage at middleweight is pretty ridiculous. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage here. Historically, over 3.5, I think, inches is significant enough to matter. So Gautier has the speed, he has the power, he has the explosiveness in this matchup. If it turns into a slow-paced kickboxing matchup, I'm trying to think back to who it was. Menafield against C, was it? Like everyone wanted Omar C to grapple and never really happened. I think that was the fight. Like there is a world where this turns into that. I'm really hoping we don't live in that world. But if it does, Valentin would be live in just a 15-minute kickboxing match if things are slow. But again, Gautier landing more than 6 significant strikes per minute, finishing most of his fights via first round finish. I like him a lot to get it done here quick. Valentin, not bad. I like the guy. Viking, cool tattoos, blah blah blah, but that doesn't get you far in the sport, unfortunately. So again, I have Valentin's picture pulled up here because I'm jumping monitor to monitor. But Gautier, one of the guys I'm most interested in. Pulling up some of the graphics too. We do finally have someone popping here as a top model play. I'd have to scroll down just a touch. It's not letting me, but Gautier, 127 OF index rating, which is excellent. And yeah, 32% owned. He's up there, but I wouldn't be surprised if that climbed even a little bit more. I definitely think he's someone I want to be getting into my lineups. Again, I like his first round win condition a bit more than I do Holland and Zellhuber, even though Holland and Zellhuber are probably safer bets to win. So again, depending on how you're finding your angles here, I do think Gautier gets it done in the first round. All right. Moving right along, we have another interesting prospect here. Islam Dulatov. I mean, taking on a guy in Adam Fugitt, who I think was kind of brought into the UFC to be cannon fodder, for lack of a better word. I mean, Fugitt took on a guy in Solomon Renfro for the LFA title, upset him, sent Renfro over to the PFL. A lot of people thought Renfro was kind of going to be the future of this division. Obviously, that has not played out at all in that way. But yeah, this kid here, excuse me. Again, jumping monitor to monitor, guys. I definitely appreciate you bearing with me, gals as well. But yeah, Gautier fighting out of Russia. He wears the German flag, though. Again, just kind of one of these other transplants. I don't know the whole story with him as far as that goes, but he's been taking on pretty quality level of opponent regionally, and I think that matters when you talk about these newcomers. Brave CF, one of the better promotions over in the Middle East. Octagon as well, European promotion who I actually have a lot of respect for. Shouts out to Zalgazou Magulov, who just won the flyweight title over there in Octagon. But yeah, when you see these quality promotions on a guy's record before they break into the UFC, that's a good thing to see for me. And yeah, Dulatov, really powerful striker. He has some wins via submission as well. I'm more impressed by his striking than anything. 6 wins by KO, 5 via submission. I think on the feet here, he's just going to be light years ahead of Fugitt, who's decent, has okay fundamentals, can wear that high guard, work behind his jab, but the speed, the power, everything's really on the Dulatov's side here. Going to bring up some statistics. If Fugitt does have a path to victory, it's probably to get his grappling going. This is a guy who averages 2 takedowns per 50 minutes, but he really hasn't had that type of success against anyone as credentialed in the grappling as a Dulatov, who himself, we have no sample to really base this on, but averaging over 5 takedowns per 15 minutes just off of that Atunes fight on the Contender Series. But yeah, the stats are useless. They're comically good, though, in favor of Dulatov here. 14 significant strikes landed per minute. Again, over 5 takedowns, 100% accuracy. I think no matter where this one goes, Fugitt's going to be outclassed. It kind of is what it is. Fugitt kind of getting a late start to his UFC career, 36 years old, coming on 37. I mean, he's had some moments, but his wins, I mean, Kinoshita, Quinlan, just tough to really rate those all that well. And then Malat, just kind of got into a war with him and then clipped. I just think Dulatov is someone the UFC is looking to build. Again, these pay-per-view cards, they're going to be looking to build prospects, and I don't think there's much left to squeeze from the stone in terms of value for Fugit for them. So Dulatov is the side here. No matter where this one goes, whether it's grappling, striking, Dulatov the more potent finisher. And again, Fugit just a little bit too slow in my opinion to hang here. Um, I will say at 9,600, another guy I do want to get exposure to. Again, I'll say the same thing that I said about Gautier last time. When we're dealing with these newcomers, it's tough to say that they're as safe as maybe someone like Holland in a good matchup or Zellhuber in a good matchup. But I do think having that first round upside for DFS is very, very appealing. So definitely another guy I want to get exposure to. Fugit in a loss probably wouldn't score all that well. If he were to somehow pull off the win, I don't know, turn this into a slow wrestling fight in which he's somehow maintaining top control, he could pay off. But to me, just not someone I'm super interested in. Kind of is what it is. Next fight here, we got Marcin Prachnio taking on Jimmy Crute. And I'll use this as an opportunity to plug the MMA Daily Plug. Shouts out to Derek Phillips, our writer, not lighter. Just pulled this quote from there. Crute should have massive advantages here, not only in cardio and durability, but wherever this fight plays out on the feet or the mat. He's usually a fast starter. Prachnio has not shown that. He's a guy who puts up a ton of resistance in fights when his opponent is willing to push a pace on him and threaten getting him out of there. And I feel the exact same way. So we can look at Jimmy Crute, what he's been doing lately. It's been a long time, I think 2020 since this guy's won a fight, right? Against Modestas Bukauskas. Draw against Bolano, came out shot out of the cannon, looked good in the first Metafield fight. Kind of let Metafield get back into that one. But if I'm looking at these opponents, we also got Jamal Hill in there, I believe Anthony Smith. Just looking through everything, I mean, every single one of these guys probably beats Marcin Prachnio, not to play the MMA math thing. And then Prachnio's wins, I mean, he's won more fights than I expected him to, breaking into the UFC. Again, lost to Bukauskas, a guy that Crute was able to beat, not to play MMA math, but wins over Devin Clark and William Knight, who are no longer with the promotion. I do expect Crute could secure wins over both these guys. It's funny. I preach no MMA math. I'm sitting here playing MMA math. But when it comes to these kind of volatile light heavyweights, especially guys on long losing streaks, I do really like to look into who they've been fighting. I do think that's very important. Prachnio, very low volume striker. He throws a lot of leg kicks, which has been an issue for Crute in the past, but not to the point that I'm super concerned about it. I think Crute knows that coming in. I think he could get his grappling going. And yeah, in agreement with Derek, in agreement with the model, in agreement with a lot of Occupy folks here. Crute's going to be a side, even coming off these losses, and maybe looking at the game log, we kind of hope that that keeps his ownership down. But he's a much better grappler. Prachnio's had major issues against grapplers in the past. I think Crute, while his technical striking isn't great, and Prachnio does have the leg kicks, he's going to be the much higher volume and more powerful striker here as well. So again, if you want to look at what he's done recently, not easy to get excited about him. But I do think he's certainly the side here. I expect he gets it done inside the distance, which makes him a really solid play in DFS. Again, guys, just going to plug at the end of the video, I will do a quick build on both sites. Maybe we stack the main event in one, maybe we don't in the other, just to kind of see what that looks like. But yeah, plugging along here. A couple more fights to get to. Really kind of a gross one here between Luka Brzeski and Ryan Spann. Spann, once a regarded prospect at light heavyweight, has made the move up to heavyweight after mixed results. Did not look great his last time out against Cortez Acosta, but Cortez Acosta now a guy who is in the top 10, I believe, fighting Sergey Pavlovich next time out. So, yeah, tough to get too down on him for that loss in his debut in the division. Luka Brzeski, a guy who, in my opinion, not really UFC level. It's tough to say that about heavyweights given how shallow the division is. But yeah, I mean, the win over Walter Walker before Walter Walker knew he could just fall for heel hooks against everyone. That's aging incredibly well, but that's really the only success he's found at the UFC level. I think Spann on the feet here is just so much faster. I'm going to be landing the bigger shots, and if he chooses to grapple, I think he's super, super live for the submission. Brzeski, pretty much a turtle on his back, trying to get out of the sun if he is taken down. Ryan Spann, taking a look at the stats, does average over a takedown per 15 minutes. Brzeski just a 36% takedown defense, and Brzeski usually massive, but he's going to be outsized here. I mean, Spann doesn't look great. I think he filled out the heavyweight frame a little bit more, but at the same time, like I don't know that he needs to be great here to beat a Luka Brzeski. As much as I'm sitting here really touting the Spawn side, I will say he's one of the more volatile fighters in the UFC. Guy we could never truly trust. Fights down to the level of his opponent, makes dumb decisions in firefights, or he could come out and knock out a guy like Dominic Reyes immediately and look amazing. But yeah, I just think Brzeski is not UFC level. Spawn is not great. Definitely underperformed what his expectations were coming into the promotion. But still, a couple levels above, in my opinion. At 8,700, a guy who's also quite reliant on the finish, I do think he's a pretty good play as far as DFS goes. If Brzeski were to win, probably doesn't even score all that well. 75 points against Walker, 58 significant strikes. I mean, I don't know. Will he get a reversal here against Spawn? Probably not. Just not much to like about Brzeski. And again, the heavyweight division is terrible. But he's still someone I don't really see as UFC level. We did get a comment a minute or two ago about McVey. I want to bring that up as we get into this next fight between Bruno Ferreira. And Jackson McVey. So McVey was on the card a couple weeks ago, initially supposed to fight Cedricus Dumas. Dumas pulled out for legal reasons. Still had his ankle bracelet on, I believe. They rebooked that fight against someone who was supposed to fight in the Contender Series. That guy was unable to make weight, and they said, you know what, Jackson, you've done so well for us in terms of just kind of taking what comes to you, that we're going to go ahead and book you against an absolute beast, Bruno Ferreira. As I say, absolute beast, I'm a bit hyperbolic, right? I mean, Ferreira's look great. At the same time, he does have clear holes in his game. Those were exposed in his fight against Abus Magomedov. But yeah, I do think he is going to be super dangerous early here. Wins over Armin Petrosian via round 2 KO. First round finishes over Stoltzfus, Haas, Gregory Rodriguez as well in his debut. And I believe that was up a weight class. But yeah, I mean, McVey, pretty dangerous on the mat here. And again, Abus was able to find that submission. It did take some time, though. I think that was more just Ferreira gassing than just being terrible at grappling, because we actually see Ferreira has been able to secure a few wins via submission early in his career regionally. He does have decent BJJ, it seems. And yeah, we could go back to the armbar win over Petrosian, just a guy who doesn't know how to grapple. But yeah, I think this is just a tougher matchup for McVey. The line does feel disrespectful, and I do agree with the comment. McVey did look good at weigh-ins, but when we get to the best bets in a minute, I think you could take the under here instead of either side. I do think Ferreira is more likely to find that finish than anyone. Just a second. Again, dealing with one monitor today. Usually have two or three. But yeah, one of my better plays. Fight ends in round 1. I think McVey is going to come out on fire, look for that submission. Ferrer probably knocks him out. But if he doesn't, you're kind of hedged. If McVey could kind of find that Hail Mary submission, I think more likely than not, though, Ferrer does probably knock him out. Not to jump ahead of the best bets. We'll talk through those in a little bit. Just to go back quickly to the ownership here, we did have Dulatov at 35, just above Gautier at 32. I did forget to mention that. But yeah, I do think Ferreira probably gets it done. I hate the price, 9,700. I think there's plenty of other ways to go. But as I'm sitting here and saying that, I'm also recommending that this fight's probably going to end in round 1. So yeah, definitely mixing some Ferreira. Probably not as owned as he should be on either side. Definitely would rather play the round 1 than anything, though, because McVey does have a path to victory via submission. I think McVey is decent. I just think Ferreira is probably a class above. And the other major thing here, which I didn't even bring up, is McVey had to cut weight twice within just a couple weeks. And this is almost always a terrible thing. Where is it? Yeah, he was supposed to fight at UFC 317. This was just 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the example I like to use the best in recent memory, or use the most, excuse me, is when Jack Della Maddalena had to cut weight twice and then take on Basel Hafez in that second week cutting weight. He did not look great, to the point that a lot of people thought Bilal Muhammad was going to just ragdoll him on the mat. A lot of people thought that Burns did a good job grappling him, but we just saw a version of Della Maddalena that wasn't 100%. We could go back to Guram, who was certainly overrated, 155 pounds, but completely picked apart and destroyed by Elvis Brenner after having to cut weight twice in 2 weeks. Historically, we've just gone through this a few times now, to the point where, yeah, never a good thing. So as much as I do think McVey has some upside, there's definitely wins for him on the UFC roster. Did look good at weigh-ins. I just don't really see it here against Ferrer necessarily. I will say he's a live enough underdog. But yeah, it's not someone I want to be heavily invested in. One more fight here, the opener. I will get to any comments. We'll do a quick build on both sites, and I'll show you my best bets. We got Carly Judice taking on, what's her? I don't want to get her name wrong. Nicole Caliari. Judice, I mean, super high volume striker. Again, popping here as one of the top plays in the occupied model. 9,100 on DK, $18 over on FanDuel, 128 OF index. Really, really solid because she does put out so much volume on the feet. And unlike a lot of the other top plays, not going to show that high in ownership. People tend to not want to pay up for these female fighters, sometimes to their own detriment. I do like Judice here. I do think she gets it done. The underdog does have a path to victory, Caliari, if she can take this fight to the mat. Much better jiu-jitsu player. I just don't think she has the wrestling or the strength necessarily to take it there, though. I'll pull up Judice's page here while I go ahead and pull up some stats on another screen. But yeah, I mean, the line here getting a little bit out of hand. Taking a look across the books, I mean, best price you're going to get on Judice right now is minus 390. Kind of ridiculous for low-level women's MMA is what it is. But I do think Judice, the side here, probably able to sprawl and brawl. If she is taken down, the much stronger fighter should be able to work her way back to the feet. So minding her P's and Q's defensively and the grappling is all she really needs to do here, in my opinion, to get it done. Landing 11.18 significant strikes per 15 minutes, 70% takedown defense compared to Caliari here, who's just landing 3.8 and absorbing 5.5, albeit across two fights, we're dealing with a very small sample size of data. But Judice here, if she's going to be low owned, really, really solid play in terms of upside for DFS. Don't mind taking a few stabs on her to win by finish, too, in betting, and we're going to talk through the bets in just a moment. But once again, really appreciate you guys tuning in. Comment here from an Anthony. Crute should be high on DFS auction. Good price takedowns are reliant on early finish. Yeah, totally agree. I don't want to give too much from the model away, but let me take a quick look at ownership. Yeah, he's actually only 21% projected owned on DK right now, 28 over on FanDuel, which is behind guys like Kyler Phillips, Paulo Costa, Carly Judice, Poirier and Max, obviously. So he's popular, but maybe not as popular as he should be. Over on FanDuel, getting a bit more love. But yeah, I do think he's just a little bit under-owned, given his upside. Maybe mix him in as an MVP as well. Getting no love on FanDuel there, just 6% owned at the MVP spot right now. So once again, check the links in the description, guys, if you want access to the plug and everything else. But yeah, let's go ahead. Want to pull up my best bets and things here. Again, I'm dealing with one monitor today, guys, on vacation, dealing with the sunburn as well, as you can see. Not complaining too much, though. Obviously, love being on the beach. Quickly, just to review kind of the breakdown. We have Holloway, Judice, Gautier as top plays in the model. Ownership, Holloway, Poirier, Ferreira, Dulatov, Gautier. We'll talk about stacking that main event in just a minute. Loving Crute right there with Derek. And here are my best bets. So last week we went 3-1. Only one I got wrong in the best bets was Calvin Kattar, who looked terrible. So I'll hold my L on that one. But the first three came through. This time, looking at Holland Rodriguez under 2.5 rounds. And again, when I'm talking best bets, I don't like to go anything over minus 200. I'm trying to get you guys some value in these, right? So when I say best, likelihood of happening is high and the price is favorable. So checking those two boxes. Ferreira McVey ends in round one. I don't love the price, but I'm very kind of confident that's the way that one goes, given McVey's history, Ferreira's history, most of their fights ending in round one, win or lose. So yeah, books are getting there, but I do think at the number, that's pretty fair. You can also play Ferreira inside, but the price is terrible. And if McVey can maybe find that early sub, you're kind of covered either way. Francisco Prado money line, I just think he's going to be putting out so much more volume than Veretennikov. Little bit concerned about Veretennikov landing something big, but Prado's durability has been solid against guys like Zellhuber to the point where I'm going to trust him on the money line here, minus 148. And then Holloway versus Poirier, over 4.5 rounds. If you don't want to pick a side, I think it's very likely that fight goes the distance. But there's always the chance we see what we did at UFC 300, where Max is pointing at the ground. They're just throwing haymakers until someone goes out cold at the end of the fight. And if that does happen, you're covered here with those last 2.5 minutes not being part of that bet. So just going over 4.5 to me, great way to go. Long shots last week, the only one we hit was Derek Lewis. Landwehr was very close. And again, I try to make these over plus 200. I did include Jimmy Crute by submission just because I like it so much, plus 150. Could have almost put that in a best bet if I'm being completely honest. Holland by submission, he could win by by KO, but I think more likely than not, he probably finds a front choke, as we saw Magny do against Rodriguez. Holland has found a lot of Darce chokes across his UFC career. Plus 225 to me does seem like value. Carly Judice by KO or sub plus 210, and then Oliveira by KO or sub plus 210. I think Phillips is live on the money line. I don't like the Oliveira price, but I think if Oliveira wins, it's probably because Phillips is fading. Oliveira is an opportunistic finisher when given that opportunity, so I can see him maybe finishing this fight late. But again, these are kind of ranked in order of likelihood, in my opinion, not necessarily always going to be the case when we do this show, but really solid plays. And just a once more recap, these are my 4 best bets here. Coming off a 3-1 week, only loss was that Caterhell. Looked terrible, but we got a few good inside the distance, including the opener. And Mike Davis inside. I'm trying to remember what the third one was. I think it was the under in Kennedy and Walter Walker. Obviously, that came through very quickly. But again, just kind of not a fight I wanted to be on either side. So maybe going over under the better way to go. Can't make that same distinction in DFS if you're only playing one lineup. But as far as betting goes, that's where we're at. So let's get a quick build in here on both sites. And the question everyone's asking is like, should we stack the main event? I think in your smaller contest, your low risk stuff, yes, go ahead. Usually, I would say a good way to get different on a slate like this would be maybe to not do so. But I'm sitting here, I think all my picks have been favorites, and I hate that. Um, I do post my picks. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter at Nick Morrow DFS Saturday morning, there's a publication that does that for me. But yeah, I don't know that I end up on any dogs here. So, in knowing that, I mean, there is merit to stacking this main event. Just keep in mind, you're not going to be getting very different. If I were to force a dog, I kind of would maybe go with either Veretennikov or Phillips. The model really likes Phillips. But again, for me, I'm on the favorites in both those fights. So I'm going to have to try to get balanced elsewhere. If we go Poirier, Holloway, Prado, who I like, Oliveira, who I like, I mean, we're still going to have to take an underdog to get different. Let's see. I don't know. If we go maybe the model likes Phillips. We'll go with Phillips just to see. I think Spann could finish quickly, and then we're able to plug in one of these 9Ks. Crute, who's been our guy. I mean, this is a solid lineup in which you are kind of stacking the main. I mean, it's very easy to get a little bit different and just pull maybe Poirier and go with the Veretennikov. We'd have to come off Prado. But then we're getting to Oliveira. We have to come up Phillips. Obviously, the only stack I want on this card is the main event, if I'm being honest. So just kind of keep that in mind. But again, I think it's plenty solid of a strategy this week to be stacking the main. Just know that it's going to be happening more frequently than ever before, perhaps. And yeah, taking a look here. Oh, man. I do really like Gautier to get it done. Actually, I don't know that I want to spend that much. So let's go ahead. Let's get different with Crute at captain, right? We go ahead and we get Spann, Holloway. Here it's easier because Poirier and Prado are the same price. So if you don't want to go with Poirier, go with Prado. Just don't play Veretennikov in that lineup. For the sake of this, though, we'll do the stack quickly. I love the Judice price here. I mean, did we already get Phillips? No. So we could go low dog if we're going Phillips on DK. Something like this. And again, try to get different with your captain. Crute only 6% owned the last time we projected him there. Just about done for the show, guys. Any last second questions, feel free to get them in. Otherwise, about to get out of here. Really do appreciate everyone. Just to quickly recap, I'll go through and give you guys my last minute pick. So in the main event, I had Max Holloway winning by decision. I think Kopylov wins by decision in the co-main. Holland by submission. Ige by decision. Zellhuber by KO. Vinicius by late finish. Not super confident in that one. The model does like Phillips as an underdog. Keep that in mind. I think Allen by decision is the side, given Vettori's durability. I like Prado. Probably by decision. I wouldn't be surprised to see him win by KO. Gautier by quick finish, likely via KO. Dulatov, probably another early KO. Crute submission. Spann, early finish. If not, that fight could get disgusting. And then I do like Ferreira by round 1 KO. But McVey's live on the mat if he can take it there quickly. It's not confident he will. And then I do think Judice probably gets it done inside the distance. I think if Caliari can take her down, she'll be live. But I think if this fight is standing, it's going to be tough for her to hang for 15 minutes. So once again, appreciate everyone. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below. We will get to those even after this live window. Obviously, we hope this video has some shelf life until the card locks tomorrow. Follow me on Twitter at DFS. Definitely get behind that paywall until you get access to slate breakdown, occupied model, ownership projections, all that good stuff. I really appreciate everyone tuning in this week. Have fun, good luck, and let's enjoy some